My parents made me give up my share for my golden brother. Now I own his company, and he works for me. My name's Jackson, and I'm 27. If you ask my brother Cody, though, I was born just to make him look better by comparison. Cody is the golden child, and yep, our family has always revolved around him. I grew up watching him get away with everything. For instance, he'd bring home a D in math, and instead of getting even a word of criticism, he'd get a new toy. Now imagine my childhood, where forgetting to take out the trash earned me a full lecture on how I was letting the family down. Back then, I really didn't understand what was wrong with me. Why were my successes treated like nothing, while Cody's every screw-up was a minor mistake? Growing up, I had to get used to being the other kid, but every time my parents looked right past me, it left a mark. Yeah, those scars stayed. But I grew up and realized it was maybe time for them to pay their dues too. So, when Cody and I were adults, my parents, so proud of building their legacy, decided to open a family business. Picture their faces when I actually took an interest in it. I started handling everything, coming up with new ideas, improving the company structure, tightening operations so we could finally start growing. Honestly, I thought they'd finally appreciate me, but that was just a mirage. Then came the day that shattered that pretty illusion. It was time to finalize shares in the company. I was ready to sign for my piece and finally feel like I'd earned something worthwhile. But of course, Jackson, it's for the family, they said, and I already knew what was coming next. Naturally, I needed to give up my share. For whom? Right, for their favorite, because Cody needs support. I knew it was pointless to argue, so I just signed the paper. But if they thought I'd accepted it, they were dead wrong. Inside, I harbored not just resentment, but all the pent-up energy that had been building since childhood. I knew this wasn't the end, that one day I'd make my move. A few years passed. I really tried to leave it all behind, deciding to just let things be. Cody could have the family business, and I'd find my own way in the world. I found a job at another company, tried to focus on that, and just move on. I figured the less I thought about that golden boy and the farce they called a legacy, the better. But here's the thing. The past loves to catch up with you. One day, I heard through the grapevine that Cody was drowning in gambling debts. Picture this. Our golden boy was betting and, surprise, surprise, losing. Who would have guessed life isn't a toy machine that always spits out sweet prizes? But the real kicker was that his financial mess was starting to put the family business at risk. And guess what my dear parents did? They didn't come to me for help, of course. To them, I'm like a backup player. They'd only call in if everyone else was out. My parents, right on cue, ran to shield him. It's just a temporary setback, they said, as if he'd just fallen off his bike, not nearly turned our business into a mini casino. In their minds, Cody was just a poor kid who needed some support and a little faith in his bright future. One evening, I ran into him at a local bar. He'd clearly had too much to drink, and by the looks of it, decided the best way to handle his crisis was to down as much cheap whiskey as he could. We started talking, if you could even call it that. Cody was so drunk he started openly whining about how unlucky he was with this whole business thing. Said he had no idea how to handle all this crap. The guy didn't even realize what he had. He saw it as just another toy they handed him for learning the alphabet once upon a time. To be honest, at that moment, I felt a strong urge to show him that in this life you pay for everything. A few weeks went by, and then I got a call from our lawyer, good old Mr. Drake. Turns out our brilliant Cody had used the family business as collateral for his debts without even bothering to tell our parents. I nearly applauded his genius, honestly. Now the company was on the verge of being seized by creditors if the debts weren't repaid. And that's when it struck me. This was my chance, one I hadn't even dared to dream of. But I didn't rush to sign papers or start pulling together the money right away. No, I gave it some serious thought, weighing all the risks. I knew that creditors' terms would be brutal, and at that moment the company looked like a half-sunken boat in a raging storm. But the idea of reclaiming the business that should have been mine was too tempting to ignore. So, yes, I bought the company in my name. It was an expensive decision, no doubt, but was it worth it? 100%. Then came the moment of truth. I invited the family to a small meeting to share the good news. Their reactions? Priceless. My parents' faces looked like they were slowly imploding, fury and shock playing across their features all at once. My mom just stared at me, almost trembling, like I was some kind of monster who'd betrayed the family. "How could you do this to your brother?" she asked, barely holding back tears. But I didn't flinch. I reminded them of the time they convinced me to give up my share of the business, because, supposedly, Cody needed support. And you know what? Now things were back to how they should be, only this time on my terms. As for Cody, you should have seen his face. He looked like someone had just told him his beloved puppy had run away to the neighbors. Cody was absolutely in shock. You know that moment when someone's standing there with their mouth open, and you can practically see them wondering, is this even real? He'd clearly expected me to shrug and step aside like usual, leaving his brilliant decisions to fate. But not this time. No, I didn't just buy the company. I did it with a clear plan, and decided that Cody would no longer play businessman on my terms. At first, he even tried to negotiate with me, thinking we could reach a reasonable compromise, which, in his mind, meant he'd be back on top, and I'd be the supportive bro. But I just smirked. "If you want to work here, you're welcome to do so for minimum wage and full-time hours," I told him. "Now you're just a regular employee, Cody. And yeah, no more special treatment." So imagine what happened to Cody after that. The guy who was used to sitting on a throne found himself in the heart of the office grind, where nobody cared about him, and he was utterly unremarkable. Every day, he showed up to work with a new level of disappointment in his eyes, as if he was still waiting for someone to come along, pat him on the shoulder and say, "Hey, you're actually the boss here." But that wasn't going to happen. His resentment grew visibly with each passing day, like a snake hissing behind my back, complaining to co-workers about how unfair life was and what a traitor I was. But I just watched. I wanted him to feel what it was like to live without his parents' constant shielding, without being reminded he was the golden boy. I needed him to understand that responsibility wasn't just a word, and that work can't be replaced by empty excuses. The more I watched him, the more I wanted to see his arrogance and vanity melt under the pressure. Cody was so unprepared for real work that it was almost funny. The guy had been on Easy Street his whole life, and now he was being forced to actually work. Every day he'd come into the office with bloodshot eyes and a sour face, as if he'd been invited to an execution. Clearly, he'd had a tough night hanging out at the bar. And yeah, 5 minutes into his shift, he'd already start complaining, finding new reasons why work was the enemy. But the sweetest part of it all was how the employees treated him. Let's just say they held him in high regard. They all knew who he was and why he was there, and they despised him as a collective. Around the office, he was even called the souvenir because he looked like a gift no one asked for. People saw him as a failure who'd gotten his position only through family ties, not skill or talent. I won't lie, watching his confidence evaporate was a personal mini-festival. The guy slowly realized he wasn't the boss anymore, but a low-level employee who wouldn't be trusted with the lunch orders, let alone the company. He'd stare blankly at his workspace, as if waiting for someone to come in and say, "Hey, sorry for the mix-up. Get back to the top." But of course, that never happened. Meanwhile, I wasn't sitting idle. I was pouring every bit of energy into taking the company to the next level. New strategies, optimized processes, strict cost control. I worked to implement all of it swiftly and effectively. My approach started paying off. Business was booming. And with each little success, I felt like this was becoming more than just a company. It was my personal victory over the past, over that time when I thought Cody and his golden legacy would rule here forever. Cody was practically at his breaking point. His hatred for me was so obvious that he didn't even try to hide it anymore. And then, one day, he barged into my office, his face screaming, "There's about to be a scene." Guess what he came with? His brilliant proposal, "Let's split the company." I nearly laughed in his face, but held back. I just smirked and asked, "Seriously? You really think I'd give you half the company? After all you've done?" I calmly reminded him that this whole mess, from start to finish, was the result of his own choices. It was his debt and his endless, I can do anything attitude that nearly turned our company into a payment for his poor decisions. Now the company is mine, completely and unconditionally, I said. And that's when Cody lost it. He exploded, like I'd taken his favorite toy away. "You're a traitor! You took advantage of my weakness!" he yelled, trying to show he actually cared. But I simply replied, "You know, I didn't take advantage of your weakness. You brought this on yourself. I just did what I had to do and reclaimed what's rightfully mine." That was the end of our heartfelt conversation. Cody stood there, red with anger, unsure of what to say. In the end, he just turned and stormed out, slamming the door so hard it almost shook the walls. I sat there, looking at the closed door, feeling like justice had finally been served. As time went on, I found myself marveling at the sheer irony of it all. Once upon a time, I was the unlucky kid, the perpetual underdog, always being compared to perfect Cody, the so-called prodigy of the family. And now, here I was, sitting at the top, watching the whole family drama unravel from my throne. Cody, the golden boy, had become just another pawn in my game, a game I now controlled with absolute authority. Who would have thought this day would ever come? The satisfaction was almost surreal. And let's be real, it felt damn good. Then, of course, came the inevitable. My parents, who had once ignored every one of my late-night efforts to keep the business afloat, suddenly appeared at my doorstep, eyes brimming with crocodile tears and voices full of concern. Their pleas started pouring out. "Show some mercy to your brother. Don't be so cruel." It was almost laughable. Mercy? Cruelty? Where was all this compassion when I was struggling, working night after night, all while they kept their rose-colored glasses firmly fixed on their beloved Cody? Back then, I was invisible, just another name on their family tree, while Cody could do no wrong. And now, they expected me to just bend over backward because family? This time, I didn't even entertain the thought. Enough was enough. I stared back at them, feeling nothing but a calm resolve. The old ties, the expectations, the guilt trips, it was all meaningless now. And from the looks on their faces, they finally understood. This time, they couldn't guilt me or manipulate me into submission. They saw, maybe for the first time, that their influence was gone, that their favorite child favoritism had no hold over me anymore. Watching their stunned, almost defeated expressions, I had to hold back a laugh. Well, dear parents, the times have changed. I've finally learned to play by my own rules. And so, while they stumbled back into their world, trying to grasp what had happened, I kept moving forward. The business was thriving beyond anyone's wildest dreams. I implemented the changes I knew would make a difference, building a company that wasn't just functional, but was exceptional, something truly meaningful. Every success, every achievement, it was mine. My creation, my victory. And this wasn't just about profit or proving a point. It was about finally living my life. No longer cast in anyone's shadow. No longer confined by anyone else's expectations. In my little world, where every decision was my own, I felt liberated. The chains of the past had finally broken. Cody, he was still around, a ghost of his former self, just another employee in the empire I built. And as for my parents, they'd have to live with the fact that their golden boy had lost his shine. Meanwhile, I, the unlucky kid, had turned my so-called bad luck into something remarkable. I was free, in control, and for the first time, truly at peace. Time marched on, and the company kept thriving, reaching heights nobody had ever imagined. Every quarter, the revenues shot up like fireworks on the 4th of July. Clients were not just satisfied, they were ecstatic. Each deal, each successful project, only cemented my place as the driving force behind this success. There was no question about it. This victory, this growth, belonged to me. I was the backbone, the leader, the one who had taken a sinking ship and turned it into a fleet. Meanwhile, Cody's life had taken a spectacularly ironic nosedive. He was still working in the company, true, but on a minimum wage that barely covered his bills. His former swagger had crumbled into a pitiful shuffle. I'd catch him slinking around the office with slumped shoulders, eyes down, avoiding anyone who might remember the golden boy he once pretended to be. The same guy who used to throw his weight around, flaunting his imaginary power, was now just a shadow of that self. It would have been downright comical if it wasn't so tragic. Watching him every day, I couldn't help but feel like I was witnessing some strange kind of karmic justice. Cody, the genius who thought he could live life without lifting a finger, had finally learned that real life demands real effort. It was as if the universe itself had decided he needed a wake-up call. He wasn't anyone's golden child anymore. He was just another guy who'd finally been knocked off his high horse and forced to reckon with reality. Funny enough, it seemed this might be the first real lesson in responsibility he'd ever had. As for me, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Pure satisfaction. This wasn't just about financial success or proving I was right. It was the feeling of having climbed out of the pit they'd thrown me into and standing victorious at the top. Every setback, every humiliation, every moment they doubted or belittled me, they were all fuel for this moment. They had painted me as the black sheep, dismissed my accomplishments, and ridiculed my ambition. But now, I was the one holding the reins. Seeing Cody with his hollow eyes, realizing how far he'd fallen, I knew I'd finally shown them all. I was more than they'd ever believed me to be. This company was no longer their dream. It was my achievement, one I'd built brick by brick, sacrifice by sacrifice. And I wasn't just succeeding, I was thriving, standing tall, vindicated in every way I'd dreamed of.